Right, Ravi, can you turn your camera off, please, if that's all right, so that we don't get you there too soon. Thank you very much for that. So hello and welcome to everyone today to the Yuki Hub Crawl 2022. And I don't know if any of you joined a little bit earlier to hear our preamble discussing the value of review scores. We might come back to that hot topic later on as we get going. I'm Sam from Yuki, and I'm your host for today's event. And this is number 6. I've got a big number 6 in the background. That's event number 6 out of 8 of our virtual hub crawl this year. One a week, all starting at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday. So there's still a couple more to cover off in the next couple of weeks, so check out those. And also all of the content's been recorded and made available, so previous sessions, you can catch up on those if you would like to do so. Once we finish the virtual component, we're going on the road. Thankfully, getting out there, getting into the all regions of the UK with some more hub crawl events. So keep an eye out for those dates and locations. To find out more information, you can go to the Yuki website at yuki.org.uk. And I'm delighted to announce that our partner for the hub crawl is Barclays Bank, and we're going to hear from them shortly. Now, today's event, as I said, is being recorded. You'll be sent some slides afterwards as well. One of the key things is asking some questions of our lovely speakers who've given up their time today. I see there's plenty of chat going on already, which is great. So welcome to all of you, and thanks for doing that. If you can pop questions in the Q&A section, bottom middle of your screen, you've got a Q&A button, just type it in there and I will endeavour to get those questions to the speakers. And if they don't have time to answer them, they will answer them in text format afterwards, after they've spoken in the Q&A section, so everyone can have a look at the questions and the answers that are being produced. And like all hub crawl events, this is a great opportunity to hear from experts on some hot topics. And today we're looking at reaching and building relationship with consumers, the all important consumers, how you can reach them, engage with them, and get them interested in your products. Now, we're going to start with a short hello from Elaine. Hello, Elaine. How are you?
I'm very good, Sam. How are you?
Do you know, I'm very well indeed. Now, if I gave myself a 7 out of 10 review score earlier, do you have a score in mind for yourself?
I would say probably 8, just that little bit better than you.
I mean, you're always just that little bit better than me, right? I'm going to hand over to you just to
Thanks,
bring us up to speed with what Barclays are up to. Thanks.
Thank you, Sam. Hi, I'm Elaine Damon, and I work at Barclays on a team dedicated to supporting the games industry. I lead strategy across the bank globally. We're members of Yuki, so therefore we're really delighted to be working with Sam and the Yuki gang on the hub crawls and seeing the value that it brings. I'm really looking forward to those kind of physical events. So Sam, get those sorted. We work on a number of initiatives across the industry and love working with Yuki. We have just we've just wound up applications for our second games demo day with Yuki, where we give independent games developers an opportunity to demonstrate their game to a panel of experts and also an industry audience. If you'd like to actually come and attend virtually, watch those games developers demo their game on the 28th of April. It's a wee while away yet, but if you'd like to join, come along and have a look. Go check out games.barclays. And finally, great topic today. Games is such a great industry, constantly growing, constantly evolving. And with that, so our audience's purchasing behaviors. Last year it was great that we could actually we did a review of our customer spend in the games industry, and saw in 2020 the amazing activity and growth of the industry. And we're currently working on a report on 2021 spend, so hoping to release that in the coming weeks. Sam, you've some amazing speakers lined up, so I think I need to stay quiet and let you move on to the next speakers. Thank you, Sam.
Wonderful, and thank you for joining us today, Elaine. And we'll share your details afterwards so people can find out a little bit more about what you're up to, which is terrific. Yes, on to our speakers. So Ravi, if you can join us first. So
hello.
That'll be wonderful. And just to prep, after you, we're going to go to Kerry and Ryan, just so everyone knows the order, so they're all prepared. How are you doing, Ravi? You all right?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I've not seen you in a while. What have you been up to?
Not much. COVID, isn't it?
What?
I've been sitting at home doing a lot. But as you can see, I'm in the office with our
Look at that. Yeah, nice. Lovely bit of promotion. You almost need it just another couple of feet higher, though, so we can see all the, yeah. Right. Well, thank you for joining me, and over to you then.
Lovely. I will just do a quick screen share presentation.
All right, I'll hang around for a second and let you know when it's there. So that looks good. Yep.
There we go. All perfect. Good? Lovely, thank you. Hi everyone, as Sam mentioned, my name is Ravi. I'm a Client Services Director at Bastion. We are a comms agency specialising in the video game sector. And I just wanted to spend a bit of time today talking to you about the difference between noise and momentum, but especially when targeting consumers. They're words that kind of get bandied around a lot when it comes to communication strategies, but what we really trying to achieve when we're trying to launch a game and definitely get consumers engaged. But one of the first things I want to kind of talk about is actually what's the point of this talk, and the reason I kind of came up with this is because I end up having a lot of conversations which are very similar to this one that I'm going to kind of play out here. So normally what happens is I'll get a call from Dev, this developer who's working at a game studio, and he spent a long time making a really great game, put a lot of time and effort into it, and had a good team that's pulled out something, and now they want to kind of tell the world, you know, and that's amazing. It's great that we've got so many games coming out and so many great kind of opportunities to talk about different products. So my first question always is you know, what is the release date? And more often than not, you know, they don't really have a plan. They just know that it's going to be amazing. Everyone's going to love it, and they're going to put it, you know, live in the next 3 weeks. 3 weeks is not a lot of time. It doesn't really help much in terms of building either noise or momentum to get to. We don't have much of a runway to kind of put that together. But maybe there's a bit of a community behind it. It just needs that kind of push over the edge. Turns out, no, we've just been focusing on making this great game, and now we just need to make some noise to get out there. And that's what a lot of people say to us. And then the next stage, which that conversation normally goes to, is, well, let's look at how many games have been relaunched on Steam in the past year. And as you can see by this graph, the trend has only been going up and up to the point where we were close to 12,000 games being launched on Steam last year. So making some noise and making some cut through is extremely difficult if you don't plan and prepare and how to do that. So what this talk's going to look at now is just kind of what the difference is between making noise and making momentum, phrases that people say, and then what are the kind of 5 tips in order to get there and make the most out of both of those tools. So what is noise? You know, it's a word that we use a lot and people will band it around, but what actually is it? Well, noise is kind of how it sort of sounds. It's that big moment. You generally only have one shot to make noise for a game. So generally it's most effective around launch, because that's when people can make the most sales. And it has to be loud. It has to stand out from the crowd. It can't just be a hum that goes on. You need to do something that puts the head above the parapet. You know, so if you're looking at a campaign and you're looking at how that might look in a campaign, it's that big spike of noise that people pay attention to, but usually dips down after. Noise doesn't last for a long time. It's sharp. It's out there, and then it starts to then settle down. Versus momentum. What is momentum? There's a phrase again that many comms professionals will use. Momentum is something that you look to build over time. It's not just one form of communication, it's a layer of communication. So PR is a part of it, but there's also community engagement, social media, influencers. It's kind of looking at that 360, and all those different layers of communication builds up over time to help you build that momentum. More often than not, when noise generally requires an investment of money to kind of put out there and make that big bang, both through media spend and influencers and coming up with stunts. Momentum actually requires more of an investment of time. It's important that you're constantly feeding into that and not just creating something that you don't have time to do and don't have time to feed. And as most effective, it's in the build up to launch and building that momentum to allow yourself to have that bit of noise. And again, looking at the kind of graph, it's kind of looking almost like a mountain range where you have the peaks going through, but actually you're just building it over time, and it gradually gets louder and louder and louder to the point where you can then have that noise moment. So what I'm looking at here and do that is that actually both noise and momentum are important for any campaign to be successful and to reach out to those consumers and get them listening to you. So here I've just kind of put together 5 tips for building momentum and generating noise, and how you can get through that. First thing is momentum starts at the beginning. What I mean by that is at that very first meeting, and when we're talking about what the game is going to look like, how we're going to build it, what the plan is going to be in place and everything like that, that very first moment, you need to start thinking about how we're going to build momentum out. Momentum is not something you can kind of shove in halfway through and go, oh, now we need to start thinking about that. The best games and the best ways to engage with consumers is starting from the very beginning. So those first meetings, document them. Any conversations, any snippets that you can talk about that can create stories are really important. And it's always very helpful to have those notes to go and look back on and talk about that as you get closer to launch. Understand what story you want to tell. Telling stories is really important way of engaging with the community, and knowing in your heart what the story is you're trying to communicate is really important, rather than just, I want to launch a good game. Make time in your plan for communication. So again, like you would make time to develop or build or whatever. You need to make time that you are actually going out there and talking. It's not an afterthought. It's built into the program that you're doing. Put thought in how you want to communicate. Are you looking at Reddit? Are you looking at Discord? Are you looking at Twitter? Do you want to go through the press? Do you want to have influencers involved? And to point 5, there is no right way to do this. Different games and different communities like to communicate in different ways. The important thing is something that feels right for you and your community, and that you can make time to do, rather than forcing yourself to create something that you are not comfortable with. Section 2 is articulate what makes you unique. It's important to think, when you look at, there's normally nearly 12,000 games being launched on Steam alone, there's got to be something that makes you different. Each game has something that is different, but it's being able to articulate that. And the first 2 points may kind of contradict themselves, but they're quite important. You need to be able to go into detail as to what makes you unique. What are the layers of different things you do? But at the same time, if you had to say it in an elevator to someone in 30 seconds, could you do that? Could you break it down? And the things that will make you unique, and what people like to talk about, and what engage with communities and engage with consumers, is talk about people. So the different people you have inside your company, what makes them different, what are the experiences that they had, what experiences and inspirations that are different, that allowed you to get to the point where you are, things like that. And then finally, the game itself, the topics, the art style, things like that. So really breaking down and thinking about what all those different things are, and putting them out almost on a whiteboard that you can talk about to what makes you unique. Think in milestones, like you would when creating a game, and think about milestones. Think about milestones for your communication as well. So think there's things like alphas and betas, there's first looks, there's previews, all these kind of things that you can put in. Make sure they're also in your plan when you're building up to a game and up towards launch. Make sure that you have time for them. And also think about the layers. So there'll be certain things that you want to communicate to a media. There are certain things you want to communicate to influencers and your community. Each of them need different things. Media, more interested in things like first looks, like interview opportunities. Influencers want to get first touches within the game, be in there earlier and sort of showing people what this thing's building up to. Community like to deep dive a lot harder. So think about those different things and plan them into. So like you would, we've got to hit this next milestone of development. We've also got to hit the next milestone of communication. Invest in your community. Again, like I said before, it's about time, not money. It's important that you are investing and giving your community stuff that they can feed off. It shouldn't be an afterthought. They should be embedded in that process all the way through, because they'll help you build that momentum. Try and staff it from day one if you can. Have someone there who can talk about this kind of stuff. Making sure that they're feeding the community, looking at what the community are asking for, and that you're kind of offering sort of you're offering them insights into what's going on. Be open and available. If there's people that want information from you, obviously you don't have to share everything all the time, but being open and available is really important to build that trust with your community. Make your community feel part of the process. If there's opportunities to have Ask Me Anythings, Discord servers that allow people to kind of talk about the game, and you're actually taking stuff in and making people feel like they're really making a difference to this game and they're actually part of it, that's going to go a long way. And the thing that I think is most important in this is that a community builds momentum. There's nothing more powerful than consumers taking what you're already doing and driving on further through word of mouth and telling their friends and telling people and sharing content themselves. It's more powerful than anything you can do with media spend or anything like that. Finally, plan for your noise phase. So you've built that momentum all the way through, but it's also important to have that noise phase as well. So make sure you build in time. So for example, if you want to launch in September, for argument's sake, make sure you've built in that time, that you're not pushing right to the end of September to make sure that your game is finished. It's really important that you've built time in to allow yourself to be able to create that noise and that you're making a plan for it. Be available, especially if you're going to make noise. People want to talk to you if you're doing the right job. So you need to be available and be able to do interviews, show people demos, etc., go to events. That's really important. And if you're stuck pushing a game, doing the final bits, you're going to miss out on many of those opportunities that noise has created. Think outside the box is a really important one. Again, as I showed before, having 12,000 games that you're battling against, doing just something that everyone else has done is not necessarily always going to be successful. I think you look at games like things like Apex Legend that just launched out of nowhere with a load of influencers. It's something that most PR people would say, oh, that's a bit crazy, I wouldn't have done that before. But thinking outside the box got that spike of attention and got that noise. So the opportunity to think differently and think outside the box is really important. If you don't have to, don't be corporate. There are a lot of companies, not the big ones, that have very special rules about how press releases need to be written, how things need to be talked about and stuff like that. You don't have to follow those rules if you don't have shareholders and stuff like that in the same kind of way if you're not floated. So don't do that. You can show your personality more, and that personality is going to stand out a lot more than doing the same thing that you see of maybe bigger companies or whatever constantly doing that corporate speak. And finally, don't forget about your community. So when you get to your kind of noise phase, you can be really tempted to suddenly just go out talking to everyone and anyone, and actually you stop doing the things that built that momentum all the way through. Make sure you're constantly thinking about them so they're built into the plan and you're still feeding and engaging that community. Because like I said before, one, your noise people go up and then it will come back down again, and it's the community that will keep it going beyond your initial noise phase. But secondly, they're the ones that are going to keep this thing growing and growing and growing over time, because their recommendations are worth more value than anything else that you can do. So that community you've built over time, don't forget them. So that's a quick sort of whistle-stop tour of noise versus momentum and how you can kind of engage with people. I hope that was interesting to people. And if anyone has any questions that I have time to answer, then happy to do so.
Wonderful, Ravi. Thank you very much for that. And if you can share your slides with me, I will forward them on to people so they can, hang on, there we go. They can follow through that that whistle-stop tour. I mean, it was really interesting, and I like the way that you've divided between momentum and noise. It's a really interesting way of doing it. A lot of focus on community. Do you think, I mean, I guess you look like you put it into three buckets, sort of media, influencers and community. Has the balance between those changed, and do you think it's going to continue to alter, or does that really depend on the game that you're making?
I think the balance definitely has changed. I think there was a long time where media were the be all and end in terms of how you could communicate and get your stories out there. But with the growth of different social media channels and where you can do that and how you can own your own message, and especially with influence as well, I think it's become slightly more level on each of those things, and the power of media is gone. I think there will always be a place for media because there's that trusted voice that people want to hear. But at the same time, I think it's almost like that rule of three that sometimes we talk about in comms, is that people need to kind of see things in three different places before they start to really engage in something. So I think it's important that you're kind of giving each one equal weight rather than kind of falling into one bucket and putting all your sort of eggs in one basket, so to speak.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Actually, a nice question that's come in, which it's quite open, so I guess you can answer this in many ways. But someone asks, is it beneficial if the community accidentally creates a noise? Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Or I guess it depends what they're saying, doesn't it?
It does depend what they're saying. I think I say again, noise can be good or bad, kind of depending on where you're going. And if you're not necessarily managing it, if it goes in the wrong direction, it's very hard to turn it. So if you're just kind of allowing it to happen organically without you touching it, obviously there are some games that have come through that's happened and they've become big successes out of nowhere that we haven't seen. But I would say that's kind of sort of hoping on luck rather than hoping on kind of a strategy and execution. So if you can use and work with the community and kind of feed them a little bit, that they'll do a lot of the legwork for you, especially if that most gaming communities are very passionate. So you don't need to do massive amount of feeding, but a little bit here and there will go a long way.
What about if a client's a bit noisy? How do you manage a noisy client, the one that wants to shout about what they're up to? How do you manage that?
It's a difficult one, but it's kind of important. Well, one, I kind of just sort of hope to kind of rely on our expertise and say that actually trying to make noise all the time, sometimes people kind of go deaf to that noise. And actually you're spending a lot of time fighting with other people who are trying to make noise at the same time. So actually having kind of light and shade to your campaign gives you, one, space to make that big amount of noise, but two, allows you to kind of create something that lasts for a longer time rather than just has that kind of single one or two spikes.
Really good point. Thank you very much for that. And thanks for your time today. And
Thank you very much.
I will, as I said, share your details afterwards. If anyone has any more questions for Ravi, please feel free to follow up with him afterwards. He's a very receptive, helpful chap. So
thank you very much, everyone.
Take care. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Next up, delighted to welcome Kerry and Ryan from FanCensus. Hello there, Kerry. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Nice to be here.
Wonderful. And Ryan is there too. Ryan, there we go. Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Hi, Sam.
So I think you're going first, aren't you, Kerry?
Yeah, I'm just going to give a quick overall introduction to who FanCensus is. We're a global data analytics company. We're based here in the UK, but obviously we specialise on video games globally. We work with all sizes of developers and publishers, from EA, Take-Two, Bethesda, Nintendo. You know, we have clients also 505, Curve, Team 17, and we bring together all elements of video game data. That's communications, like social, PR, what's on front pages of websites, you know, what journalists are actually talking about. Also, you know, the actual journalists themselves, we have been monitoring. And we also have the commercial side of the data. So that's the sell-through, the digital downloads, price monitoring, and also the digital shelf. So you can see where your product is exposed on digital as well as online retailers. Are you getting spots in the new releases? Are you getting exposure on their front pages? And all of this information brings together an overview of how your competitors have performed or your game is performing prior and after launch. However, some of our biggest successes have been from when clients approach us with ideas, and we can use all our knowledge and our data understanding to bring together a solution. We have our own development team. We built our own proprietary platform and dashboard solution. Therefore, we can provide solutions to our clients, large and small, that brings together unique data sets. So what Ryan has got here today for you, that he's going to run you through, is an idea that was grown in-house, but obviously we've spoken to a number of clients about the positioning of this, and we feel that it's quite unique in how you can now glean information from your community. So Ryan, over to you.
Thanks, Kerry. Hi everyone, my name is Ryan Janes. I'm the head of global insights and analytics at FanCensus. I've been with the company for 10 years now, and that's seen me, be a part of the analysis of everything from, the press campaigns of gaming products through to social media, the commercial side that Kerry mentioned, and of course the community, which is what we're here to talk about today, specifically video content that's being produced and how to gather that feedback from consumers. And so a lot of conversations, as Kerry has mentioned, is where a lot of these ideas, these developments come from. And one that we've had is around video content, and the feedback is there can be more done with it. You're producing these videos that take a lot of time and effort to put out, and then the actual insight and feedback you're getting is not to what it needs to be. It can be limited in terms of what you're actually gathering from it. And so our solution that we've invested in is allowing to offer that higher level of understanding, whether it's the sentiment, how people feel about the video itself, but more importantly, the specifics of that video, that trailer, what they like, what they didn't like. And another area that we've heard many times as well is that the process to get this information can be a slow one. And so one focus we wanted was that, like anything we offer, our data sets, it's about that speed, the importance of speed and getting that information in a timely manner. So in the case of when a live stream happens, getting that information as soon as it goes live, or video assets dropping as soon as they've gone out there on YouTube, being able to see what the community are saying. And then another area is also the difficulty in getting more information and contacting these viewers. They viewed it, but you don't know how to ask them more questions, get more insight from them. And that's another area as well. And giving companies total freedom in asking questions that are tied to their IP or to the trailer specifically as well. And that solution is Guru. And I'm just going to hop over to my web browser and just show you, this is Guru in its beta form. It's a website that, as you can see, has a number of different videos there. It's almost got a Netflix style view. It allows consumers, gamers to hop in, they can watch videos. But the key factor here is that they can offer their input, they can offer their insight, their feedback. And we're not talking just a case of giving a thumbs up or a thumbs down, but actually being able to pinpoint specific moments in the video and say, I like this particular moment. I didn't like, 1 minute in when this happened, or highlight specific aspects of a trailer, whether it's I hated the look of this game visually, or I really like music in this trailer. And so you can see it's been split out by genre. So if there's a particular genre they want to focus on, they've got a lineup of trailers to work their way through. They're free to create accounts as well. As you can see, I'm logged in as my account here. And along the top, we have what we call clans. And these are essentially group chats that I've either set up and invited people to, or I've been invited to myself. And that gives the option to watch this content, but of course, chat with other people in your clan. So for example, if I was like, hello in here, this will go out to everyone in the Team VG clan. And as you can see, someone has replied back already saying howdy. Another thing that I could do as well, emphasizing that sense of community, is I might want to share a particular trailer. So I could say, let's have this Hyper Light Drifter trailer, share it with my group. And as you can see, it's been added there at the bottom. So anyone in there will then be able to check it out and in turn give their feedback to that trailer as well. Great, I'll watch on the train home. Fantastic. So I've mentioned about watching these videos. So of course, that's the big focus here. If we select this video here, Hyper Light Drifter, we could dive into here. That video is going to start playing away. And you'll see these buttons on the left and right-hand side here, the left being specific aspects of the game, the right being levels of sentiment that the person wants to give. And if they want to give it in a general sense, they can. They could say, I'm indifferent to what I'm watching. And as you can see, some text flying by, that can be anything from something a bit comical, it could be something a bit sarcastic, and more importantly, it could be statistical information comparing the users or the viewers' feedback with the rest of the gaming public, making them feel more involved, making them feel like they're part of something greater and other people are watching this same trailer. Also, if you wanted to, you could hop into a specific aspect and say, I really like the look of this visually, and you'll see these bubbles pop up. So it's adding a bit of extra flavor text there, something a bit more fun. I could select stunning, all those bubbles pop away. And as you can see, I'm getting that text scrolling across. Of course, 100% of other viewers agreed with me. It's just me because we're in a beta. So that's, obviously will change when there's big groups of people in it. And then as the video comes to a conclusion towards the end, I mentioned those questions, being able to personalize questions to the viewers. So these are more generic, but of course, as you can imagine, as you'll see later, you can get more specific to your product. What did I like best? The presentation, how excited am I to play this game for? And all this information has been submitted into our Guru system. And of course, that then gets fed through to the publishers and developers of said games as well. And I mentioned earlier about profiles at the top right here. If I hop into my profiles, it's not just taking this data from the consumer, but giving it back to them in a way that's interesting for them. So another thing as well is a leveling system. So again, it's gamifying the experience. Every video I rank or give feedback to, I'm earning experience. Every level I go up, I'm unlocking extra goodies like cosmetics for my profile or being entered into competitions to win prizes in games. Another element I could do as well, and something we're finding with gamers more and more, is they're becoming more interested in the statistical side of the industry. It's not just a case of, I like this game, I hate this game. There's a reason why you see these forums and threads pop up on Reset Era talking about the latest UK chart sales for the week. And there's a big conversation going just around that. And so, for example, I put in Call of Duty Warzone. Not only is it giving me my statistical analysis, but it's comparing that with everyone who has watched any content on this game through Guru there. And so that's Guru at the moment. There's plenty more, as you'll see in the presentation as well, aimed to keep the consumer engaged. And one thing I wanted to highlight, we've done a number of betas, and the first one we did was the State of Play last October. And the reason I want to draw attention to this is because this is the moment where we saw just how important and how much more can be done from this video content, or in this case, a live stream when it comes to getting that insight. And so it was a 22-minute event focused primarily on indie games that were coming to the PS5. And so you can see along our x-axis there, the 22 minutes with the sentiment rating as we go along. And it immediately draws your attention to those points in there where you can see the sentiment was perhaps poorly received. You can see Five Nights at Freddy's, Star Ocean being the worst received at 17 minutes. We know that's when that game was being featured in said event. But to take it a step further, as you saw in the dashboard with the feedback, we can analyze it by the different aspects that they didn't like. We know they didn't like Five Nights at Freddy's, but what was it they didn't like in that trailer? And so, for example, here we can see on the audio side, We Are AFK being negatively received on the audio, but King of Fighters not only having a strong reception, but the strongest reception of any moment in that event. Presentation, we can see the Devil Inside toward the end, multiple points where people lost interest and were more critical. Perhaps they thought that that segment went on too long. And then Five Nights at Freddy's, which I mentioned, we knew it had a negative reception, but here we can see the visual style of the game was the main culprit for that. And so, of course, that's great for a live stream, but of course, not every publisher, every developer is going to be featuring their games in live streams. Same rules apply. The same can hold true for the trailers that go live on YouTube. And then when it comes to YouTube, it used to be a case of being able to identify how many thumbs up, how many thumbs down, how many likes, how many dislikes, and get a ratio breakdown. But of course, YouTube no longer openly offer that dislike information unless you own the channel. So that's a lot of channels where you're not getting that information. And in essence, it then leaves you with essentially just a number of likes for that video. On the Guru side of things, though, there are 5 tiers of sentiment that users can award as they're watching a video. It allows them to ask those custom questions to these gamers as well. And then most importantly, it allows the publisher and developer to pinpoint the aspects of trailers that worked, what didn't, and allow them to plan better for future asset videos that they drop. What should they double down on? In this case, let's emphasize the visuals for this game. So how does it work from a developer and publisher standpoint? So working with developers and publishers, Guru offers that site takeover for the game. So if they have a product, it will feature with banners, it will feature with all their videos front and center, so people who go to Guru see it straight away, and also customizable skins to the dashboard that you saw. And I've got an example in a moment that you'll see. Company clans, so we can open up clans specific to that company that they can moderate and interact with their own community in there as well, update them on what's coming and such. Offer them their own URL for their game, which again, they can hand out as they see fit to their communities, set up their own questions, access all this information in real time. And all this is a free service. It's the only thing that's asked on our side is that the publisher or developer in question promotes via a social platform, their social platform, Guru itself. And beyond that as well, there are extras that will have an additional cost attached, such as some companies might want to have a close focus group. Guru can totally cater to that as well. And so here we've got examples of the site takeover. We've got Horizon Forbidden West. We've got those videos front and center. We can also offer initiatives, extra rewards for people who go through to those videos and give their feedback. I mentioned earlier about customizable skin for the viewer itself. So for Sonic Frontiers, you can see we've got different emojis on the right. We've even got the iconic rings instead of the bubbles there. Even the feedback along the top can be tailored to be specific to the game and ask questions about, in this case, the location, the setting of the game, Starfall Islands. And so all this data is being fed into our existing analytics platform, Fusion, which already houses everything from press to social media to commercial data that Kerry was talking about earlier. And really, it's up to the user to dive in and start looking at the community feedback as and how they want. In this case, it's just a simple chart that shows the sentiment behind each aspect of a trailer. It could be that you want to compare with other competitors out there, because context is key. Your game is not releasing in a bubble. There are other competitors of a similar genre or a similar style that you can learn from. You can see what pitfalls to avoid that they may have stumbled to when it came to their video trailers, and what successes that you could hopefully replicate as well. And then in terms of those questions at the end, allowing you to drill in and ask specifics to those people who are already engaged with your video. So for example, with Mario Strikers Battle League, what price range would you be interested in paying? What DLC would you like to see? Which character did you enjoy seeing? These questions allow you to, again, plan for your future assets. In this case, Bowser was very popular. Perhaps we should feature him more so in the next trailer that we release, for example. And of course, you've got the gamers and the Guru members side, and these are key because without them, the information, there's no data to actually accumulate. And so we touched upon the statistics side of things, where you can look at a particular game, see how your view compared with others, but expanding that so you can see what platform you tend to drift toward, what genres you tend to view highly or negatively, and more importantly, being able to compare that with the wider public or your clans or your friends. And then another element as well, we're gamers ourselves at the company, is what would we like to see? And one thing that constantly came up was, I want to see where I can get the game for the cheapest. And so because we're already accumulating this data from over 600 retailers across the world, we put that into Fusion along with all the editorial data that we gather, like review scores and the latest headlines. And it's giving more incentive to the Guru users to come back and see this information, along with, of course, interacting with those videos and giving feedback as well. And then the last thing as well is gamifying the experience that I talked about earlier. So giving them, they're gamers at the end of the day. And so making it feel like they're being rewarded for something, working towards something, unlocking things with the leveling system like taglines or different buttons for the feedback buttons, avatars, chat emojis that they can use in their clans, competitions that can win them big prizes and more. And so in closing, really, the idea with Guru is that everyone feels like they have something to gain from this. There's something that they can take in. From a publisher and developer side, they have that Guru status of getting all this information from the consumers, from the viewers of their video assets. What that means is getting a deeper level of insight that's not easily available currently. It's identifying those moments, to the very minute or second, if you wanted to, that have hit or have missed in those video assets and streams. Understanding the sentiment behind that game, and specifically the sentiment behind different aspects of the game. Gathering feedback in a quick manner, asking specific questions so you can really dive in and ask people who are already engaged with that video. And then filtering the audience. If you wanted to look at people who have viewed a lot of racing game trailers and you're releasing a racing game, you can narrow that search down and see what they are saying about your video game that's coming out that's a racer. And then on the consumer side, again, it's about them feeling that they're getting all this information. They are, in a sense, a guru, in that they have all this information at their fingertips. They feel like they're connecting directly to the game creators by giving their feedback. They are a part of these many sub-communities that they can build with friends, colleagues, and so on. They can get information such as the latest prices or editorial content that goes up as it goes live. They can compare their opinions with others, whether it's friends, whether it's just the greater gaming public. And at the end of the day, the key thing is making them feel like what their time is well spent. They are earning rewards. What they're doing actually feels satisfying for them. And really, at the end of the day, with both of these, one helps the other in that consumers watch these videos, they give their feedback, they send that through to us, that comes through to the publisher and developer. They can take that on board, and that will help them plan and improve their campaigns going forward, which in turn will affect how the game is promoted. It will affect the end result of the game, which benefits the consumer as well. And so I'm going to invite Kerry back in for any questions, if anyone has any.
So thank you, Ryan. Do you want to stop sharing your screen, and then we can get Kerry? Oh, wonderful. Then we can get Kerry back as well. It's fascinating. What I like particularly about this is that it's the most important thing is interpreting the data. Having data is all great, but what do you actually, how do you turn that into something meaningful? And that must be quite a big challenge for you. I mean, how do you decide what are the things that you're going to focus on when all this data is coming in?
I mean, really, that comes down to our analytics platform that we've created. We've got all the variables put in there, and it's built in such a flexible way that the brief would be, we want to find this out, and therefore our understanding of how the dashboard works, we could then provide that data. Or if we couldn't provide it in what we've already got, our development team can turn those types of things around very quickly.
Yeah, that does make sense. That does make sense. And you mentioned quite a lot of your clients being publishers. How does Guru work for indie studios, would you say? What are the advantages for them in particular?
I mean, I think with Guru is that, a lot of the independents, they have to put a lot of time and effort into putting content out there, whether that's Discord, whether that's Twitter. There's a whole load of energy that has to go behind that. And then you've also got to take off your development team to perhaps provide that content to you to keep that regular communication going. And with Guru, once you've done an asset drop, then you are also able to look at what that audience is looking at after that. So, the analysis is constant, even though they may not be watching your video, they have, and therefore you can see the trends and what they're commenting on thereafter that. So it's like a way of keeping in touch with your community without necessarily having to keep feeding that community long term.
Yeah, that's interesting, really interesting. And there's quite a few questions in the Q&A for you. I'll go through a couple of them quickly and then you can answer a couple of them afterwards. But
okay.
Is Guru actually live yet? You talked about being in beta. Is this
It's we're waiting. I mean, it's completely developed. There's a few little tweaks but we haven't fully launched it. We do have a small user base that we've got from our beta at the moment. That's why we're trying to work with publishers and developers in a freemium business model. So it's not chargeable at this moment in time. But we do ask them to tweet out or to publicize it and direct traffic to their own area of Guru, so that the audience can be built up that way.
Yeah, it's interesting. Final question then. I'm going to end with this question. If you can have a look at the Q&A and type some answers in there, everyone can see them. They can get a sense for this, which is interesting. Some really good questions in there. Building an audience, how are you going to get consumers signed up? Because that's a really interesting dynamic of this project.
I mean, it's obviously the incentive. We could go down and just do blatant sort of, if they comment on videos X amount of times, they get X in an Amazon voucher or something like that. Obviously, that's something that we could do. But with working with publishers and developers who already have a community, and then we're providing the data back to them free of charge, it's almost self-fulfilling. Consumers are communicating back to the developers, and the developers are then receiving that feedback in real time, and therefore it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah,
building your own community there of publishers and developers all providing contacts and benefit to each other sounds amazing. Listen, really pleased to see it. Thank you very much for coming and sharing that with us today. We'll share the slides afterwards. If you can have a look at those questions in Q&A, that would be fantastic. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks, Ryan.
Cheers.
Bye.
Okay, and now next up is Sam Borton. Sam, hello there. How are you? You're on mute, Sam, unfortunately.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, got you. Oh, well done. Amazing.
I'm good, Sam. How are you?
Do you know, very well. Thank you very much. I'm enjoying this. A really nice variety of talks so far, and no doubt you'll continue that theme. So I'll hand over to you now. Thank you.
Great, thanks. All right, can you see the screen?
Yep, I can see that wonderfully. So take it away.
All right, thanks. So hello, everyone. My name is Sam Bowden. I'm a junior strategist over at Waste Creative, which is a fan-first creative agency based in London. As well as that, also, I'm a complete gaming nerd, playing Pokemon Yellow to Hollow Knight and Dota 2 and more. So we're a fan-first agency. We're a fan-first agency based in London, like I said, and we work with some of the biggest brands in gaming, like Riot, Supercell, Nintendo. And at the moment, I myself are particularly working in the mobile gaming space with Supercell, but some of the things I'm going to show you today can be applied to other platforms as well. So I recently just joined Waste as a junior strategist, and in the past year, I've learned a lot about building stronger relationships with gaming audiences. So today, I'd like to share some 5 things that I've learned that will hopefully be quite useful for you. So first of all, the big question is, why bother? Why bother if you're a small to medium-sized company or gaming company? Would you care about building strong relationships with your audience? Well, first of all, by building these relationships, you transform your player base, your audience, into something more holistic, a community. And this comes with a variety of benefits. Your community can act like a canary in a coal mine. Often enough times, fans and players can notice problems that are happening in the game well before some developers do, because they're the ones that are constantly playing it, discussing it, and engaging with it. The community as well is the life force of the game. It's why we say over at Waste that fans have power. We call it fan power. And it's important to, make sure that you actually take good care to develop and strengthen that relationship. But enough about the why, let's talk about the how. So one of the main things that you can do, and that we do at Waste, is we use social media as a tool for interacting with your audience. But it's important to remember that that's all social media is. It's a tool. Your audience isn't Twitter, it isn't Instagram or TikTok, but it's the specific users and player archetypes that are on those platforms that you're trying to reach. So the first step that you have to do in order to achieve that is listen. You incorporate social listening to learn about your audience and your players. You learn about what they're talking about in relation to your game. What are their likes and their dislikes, and also that'll help you develop a tone of voice. Understanding how to talk to them. How are they talking to each other? What words are they using? You can learn about their meme culture, if there is one. Are they making memes about specific characters? And it's also important to remember that no 2 communities are the same, even with games within the same genre. You're not going to have the exact same community when you're comparing Call of Duty with Battlefield. The 2 communities might be in the same genre, but they're vastly different. So one example of how this can be put into practice is a game that I'm currently working on, which is Clash Quest, a game that's currently in soft launch created by Supercell. It's a mobile puzzle game. And this post right here, what you're seeing, is basically a Clash Quest version of a chess puzzle. And we basically posted this photo and we challenged our community to try to solve it in 2 moves, based on nothing but the information on the screen. But the way that we got to this post was the first stage was me going on our dedicated Discord server and scrolling through the messages, and I noticed a few talking points. First of all, we noticed that our community is very strategically orientated. They love to discuss the strategy, the best ways to play the game. Secondly, I noticed that players, independent of any influences from us or by the game developers, were taking screenshots of their boards and challenging other members of the community to actually beat the game in certain moves. And this made me think of chess puzzles, as I'm a chess player myself. And so we told the client, we should make kind of Clash Quest versions of chess puzzles. And when we posted this, it actually became super popular, and the community were, saying all sorts of answers, from actually going into the strategy of trying to solve it, and also providing some meme answers. And we developed a back and forth, and it was extremely well crafted idea that all came about through social listening and using what we were seeing on social media to then build a stronger relationship with our audience. The next thing I'll talk about is applying wider culture. So you want to apply wider cultural elements into your brand and to develop your relationship with your audience. As well as that, you need to keep it up to date as much as possible, like your personal knowledge of pop culture, like what's going on, the memes, the trends, because especially now more than ever, things are becoming more viral and disappearing so much faster. So when you think about like wider pop culture, you need to understand that players, like your players, are not only interested in your game. They're also interested in movies. They're also interested in TV shows, music, sports, and wider current events. But all of those things, assuming that you can find some sort of link back to your game, are just another opportunity to connect with your audience and strengthen that relationship. So some examples that I have of doing that is these two. So on the left here, you see two barbarians, which are two Supercell characters, barbarians, very widely known across like the mobile gaming space. They're one of the signature mascots. We noticed that there was this trend about like the Island Boys on like TikTok and YouTube, which are these two twins from Cuba, I believe, and they had like tattoos and crazy hair, and they released a song. It was all, insane how the internet can be, and they exploded on the internet. So what we did over at Waste is we turned those Island Boys and we questify. We applied a link to Clash Quest, and because I should say Clash Quest is based on an archipelago of islands as well, and we decorated them with tattoos based on other characters and like bosses and just general symbolism related to our game. And then we also included some teaser images within the tattoos that our community started to notice. So they were talking about it organically without us needing to prompt them. We didn't mention anything about the teasers. We were just capitalizing on a piece of wider culture and we organically generated more engagement and reach and expanded our community. Similarly, with Brawl Stars, another very popular Supercell mobile game, we noticed a while ago that our fans love to combine Brawl Stars with wider pop culture because they have a large character roster. So they were already independently of us creating fan art of superheroes, especially Marvel characters. But what if they were in Brawl Stars, for example? And then Marvel's What If happened, which was that show about alternate realities. And again, like we saw that Brawl Stars players were doing like, oh, what if Colt was a woman, which is actually the character that you see on the screen. And we made a Brawl Stars What If poster. And again, it did extremely well on like Twitter and Instagram. And it was a great like post that we did. And these are just two of like small examples of ways that you can apply like wider pop culture influences and interests that your players have independent of your own brand, but finding a way to link the two together and enhancing that relationship you have with your community. Now, it's important to understand that when you're building an audience, when you're building an audience and you're developing this community, that at one point in time, it's going to become a two-way street. They're going to be listening to you and trying to engage with you because people love to engage with brands, especially brands they love. But because you're developing that emotional connection, they're going to start believing and feeling that they have a stake in their community. So they own the community as much as you do. And it may sound scary at first if you're a developer and you're like, oh, wow, like these fans have this control, but no, like it's okay. We're not saying that, I'm not trying to say that, you should be developing your game solely based on the fans. And if the fans don't like something, you take it out. Like, that's not what I'm trying to say. What I want to say is that they own this community. If you're someone that loves Pokemon, for example, or Clash of Clans, you have an emotional investment to those games and you feel like you have a stake in that. So it's important for you as the brand to understand that and listen to them as much as they want to listen to you. But how does that look in practice? So one of the things that we've done for Valorant UK on Twitter is during the holiday season, we wanted to give back and highlight some members of the community. So starting with the photo on the left, we have this Christmas artwork that we posted. It's a very nice piece of artwork, but what made it so special for our community is that we dotted it with like fan-made skins and content creators and like a bit more like famous members of our community. And we just scattered all of those little Easter eggs into the photo. And we encouraged our community to find them. And they did, and they loved it because it's like in the holiday season, it was all about coming together. And it was a unique way to celebrate with the community, and also a way for Valorant UK to say, yeah, we recognize you guys. Like, we're acknowledging, we're giving back, and we're listening to you. Similarly, on the post that you can see on your right, we wanted to spotlight and give some shout outs to certain members of the community. So we highlighted some 5 different community members. You know, one was a caster, one was a captain, one was like a fan who liked to design skins for the game. And we wanted to just give them a little shout out. And the community sentiment and response was they felt extremely proud seeing some of like the creators that they follow, the members of the community that they liked, like these kind of bigger figureheads. They felt proud that like they weren't just fans of the game, they're fans of specific people in the community. And they were happy to see official recognition from the brand because Valorant UK was listening and wanted to give back and show appreciation. That goes back to that two-way street. Now, finally, and this is especially true in the mobile game business because it moves so much faster, it's an ongoing journey. You eventually, as you're doing your social listening, as you're researching and you're learning, that learning from your audience is going to transform into something even deeper. It's going to transform into understanding. And what I mean by understanding your audience is it's almost like you're entering the same wavelength as them. You know, you're working together, a bit like the two-way street. It's about like working in harmony, like with your audience. And the more that you listen and the more that you engage, the more that you can pick up on useful insights and like nuggets and be able to strengthen that further. And again, let's see that done in practice with this image. So Brawl Stars, a few years ago when it was in open beta, we noticed that a lot of the players were worried that Supercell was going to kill their game. Because in the past, Supercell, when they open launch games into beta, they sometimes will just kill games. If they don't think that it's worth going global, instead of investing it in any way, they will just cancel the game. It's something that Supercell is very known to do. And we noticed a lot of sentiment, a lot of worry that they're going to do that to Brawl Stars. So we played, you know, from listening and understanding, like we played on how like this community was kind of unifying based on this fear that the game was going to be canceled. So we were basically saying that we were gonna reset the account, you know, tweets were deleted, and all that was left was just this image of some of the Brawl Stars characters walking into the sunset. And a little bit after that, we put a live stream on where we announced the game was going global. And the response was massive. Players went completely crazy. The hashtag "Don't Kill Brawl Stars," was immediately taken over. It was trending on Twitter, and just with zero content and zero context and zero paid marketing was done. Supercell's goal for their global release was 2 million global player registrations in the 4-week pre-registration period. What actually happened was they got 5 million pre-registrations within 8 hours, and a community that was extremely unified. It was the top iPhone game in 32 different countries when it hit global. And that just goes to show, if you actually take the time to listen, to understand, and then engage in a meaningful, unique way that you can only do based on those understandings and those foundations that you build, you can create some truly excellent marketing and moments with your community by your side. And to sum that all up, with a quote from my favorite TV show, Community. You've created something unstoppable. You have created a community. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Samuel, for joining us today and taking us through that. Some really nice stories there. Often quite large companies, if you don't mind me saying. I think that was really interesting. What about if we're, let's assume some of our audience are somewhat smaller businesses and smaller enterprises. How do they go about building that that important community? I mean, larger companies have got that fan base and they can do it. What do you think are maybe some of the basic principles for smaller companies? Where do they start?
So where they would start, I would say that the best way to start would just to be like what I was saying earlier, is to listen. If you let's say you're creating a strategy game like an RTS, for example, it's you look at some of your competitors, some games in a similar genre, and you look at just how some of their players are talking about the game. Like what are their key interests, and it's all just kind of trying to map out exactly like who you're trying to get your game to appeal to, and like how do they like to interact and express that game like outside of the game, if that makes sense.
It does.
Yeah. So it's just about like creating that understanding, and you don't need to be like a large company. Like obviously it's easier for them because they're so well known, but as long as you have an understanding of the audience that you want to connect with, then you can find those like unique like angles, those unique methods to do that, no matter the size.
It's really interesting. And I guess one of the mechanics you explained then was the use of references to pop culture, just being understanding what's going on in the market and how you can be part of that. It's really interesting that. I mean, obviously there's implications around using other people's IP and not being careful about how you're doing it. Is use of that pop culture sort of organic marketing strategies, is that a way of just supporting existing community, or can that also lead to substantial growth in communities by having that association?
It is obviously easier to do when you have that established community already, but it is like if you're trying to grow your community with like the way the internet works, sometimes it just takes like one right post before you go viral. And if you're trying to grow your community, as long as there's like an authentic link, because like, there have been a few times where some brand is trying to jump on a trend and it's completely missed the mark and people just go like, what? But if your brand can organically like find a rationale, like find a link, then for example, let's say you create your own poster of a Marvel movie, and serendipity happens and you get an official retweet by like that Marvel movie's account because they just thought it was a cool crossover. And that's just like one way where you can like organically build engagement, because when you're doing that, you're also targeting a little bit of the fans of the thing you're trying to cross over. So that's going to expose awareness. If you use like their hashtag, for example, and it also comes down to timing. You need to make sure that it's all timed accordingly.
Makes sense. Sounds like you need friends in high places, let's be honest, in all of these incredible locations. Listen, that was great. Thank you very much, Sam, for joining us. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much for joining us today. And as Sam disappears and Lucy comes to join us, Sam mentioned the authenticity of brands getting involved and how they can do that in the right way. And perhaps sometimes they don't do it in the right way. We might hear a little bit about that from you, Lucy, won't we? From yours truly.
Yes, maybe a little bit.
Maybe a little bit, right. Well, I'll hand over to you. Thank you very much for waiting so patiently. It's all yours.
That's all right. Lovely. Let me get this slideshow. Can you all see that?
Yep, it's yellow. It's there. Wonderful.
This lovely bright yellow to round us out, just in case anyone's dropped off. I'm here to wake you back up again. Lovely. So I am Lucy Jones. I am Creator Campaign Manager at Yours Truly. I manage creator campaigns, does what it says on the tin. Yours Truly is a creative marketing agency. We work with a bunch of different brands and games. So we work with names like Wizards of the Coast on D&D and Magic the Gathering, but we also work with a lot of different indie game teams of sizes big and small. We've actually recently just finished up a campaign for a private division on Ollie Ollie World, which is a lot of fun. And just a little bit about me, my industry history. I've got 3 years experience working with indie game studios, specifically in sort of PR and marketing. So I know quite a few members of the audience might be building their own game studio, and I have massive respect for you. I know what it's like. I know you're very stressed, and I'm rooting for you. So, a little animation. Today, I'm going to be chatting about how and why you should be looking to authentically reach Gen Z, especially, as a game studio looking to kind of market for the first time, why it's important to kind of consider this subsection of your audience. Cool. So I'm first going to start off with who I'm talking about when I talk about Gen Z. Now, if I was specifically talking about age, I would have called this talk, how to reach, 13 to mid 20-year-olds. But I'm not really when it comes to Gen Z. We're thinking more mindset than age range. Technically, on paper, that is the kind of ballpark numbers we're looking at. We are looking at your younger audiences. But really, Gen Z is more about attitudes. It's more about behavior. Gen Z can really be identified as the subsection of your audience that are really they're savvy, they're switched on. They've grown up in a tech and digital world. They are not just tech literate. They don't just know their way around things, but they're experts in digital life. They're comfortable moving from different mechanics, everything that's coming out. They're easily sort of fluid from one platform to the other. They're able to pick up new trends easily, and they actually flourish when new trends are coming in and coming out of their lives. Especially great for gaming studios. For Gen Z specifically, gaming is seen as kind of a given hobby, like films, TV, and music. You may find with older subsections of your audience, gaming really is still kind of a niche, although that is definitely changing. But with Gen Z, asking someone if they like gaming is kind of the same as asking if they like music. It's not about if they like it, it's about what sort of section of that hobby do they like and what are they interested in. And lastly, sort of subsection of Gen Z, they find it very easy and natural to express who they are, what they like, and what they're passionate about. Really, just overall adapting to new platforms and able to adapt to sort of new trends and cultures, which makes marketing to them easy and tricky at the same time. This is a very adaptable subsection of your audience, and it means you're going to have to keep up or fall behind. But if you manage to get on their wavelength, you are going to see some endless benefits. And this really does link into what a lot of Sam was talking to earlier about listening and adapting and really kind of understanding who you're speaking to. Cool. So that kind of brings me into what I wanted to chat about next, which is why should you bother? Why should you bother talking to Gen Z? Why should you bother trying to outreach to them? Why are they a subsection that you should be specifically targeting in a different way to other folks that you might be reaching out to for interest in your game? So first off is kind of sort of a stepping back and just kind of looking at the facts of the situation, and it really is to extend the potential length of your customers' loyalty. Gen Z are, your youngest subsection of your audience. They are absolutely in their prime to find new brands, new games that they were looking to trust and follow for a significant amount of time. That saying, it's difficult to teach like old horses new tricks. Sometimes you can find it tricky to get into, say, if you're working in like Sam was talking about, like the strategy genre, you have older audiences who are used to what they like, they like a certain way and a certain way that a genre is played out. Whereas Gen Z might be interested in something a bit different, something trying new mechanics. Maybe they've never heard of, kind of the genre that you're working on yet. They are really in their prime to really latch on and find brands that they trust and games that they trust and are looking to follow for a significant amount of time. They are, like I said, they are passionate about who they are. They're passionate about what they do, which makes them ideal ambassadors for your game within your community. If you manage to speak their language, they can get excited quickly. They are eager. They will talk about it. They are very much recommendation and community focused people. If you manage to tap into the right kind of creator, the right kind of subsection on a social media platform, we are coming on to TikTok in a minute. Do not worry, it is mentioned, and I know you probably have some questions about it. But if you manage to tap into those right subcultures within Gen Z, you will unlock an entirely new audience. And if you, like I said, if you're managing to speak their language, you're already kind of ahead of the game. It's just kind of getting there. And lastly, they are the future. You know, you can't be just marketing to older generations forever. If you want your brand and you want your game to have that long life to it, you are going to have to consider who your younger customers are and really kind of understand them, instead of, you know, the hesitancy is to kind of put them to one side and go, no, they're not really for us. We're not really thinking young. When people say the word young, you know, you were really kind of thinking, especially in terms of gaming, like sort of children era. And then we immediately flip on to kind of young adults into like 30s. And we kind of miss that portion in between. And if you really want your game to be able to sort of stick the landing, especially online, Gen Zs are the ones that you want to be talking to. Cool. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about how you want to connect with Gen Z. How are you actually going to get about to doing that? Now, it is here. TikTok is here. I'm sure you've heard it before. TikTok really is the ideal place for you to be engaging with Gen Z from a marketing perspective, followed by Twitch and YouTube. So if you've not used the platform before, these screenshots are all from TikToks. They're all from TikTok, a TikTok campaign that I just finished running for OlliOlli World, which is a skateboarding platformer that was just released by Private Division. So this is the kind of interface, if you're not too familiar, so it'll take up your entire phone screen, which is ideal. And it is just your usual kind of scrolling mechanic. It is video after video, sometimes interspiced by ads. That's your general introduction to TikTok. When really looking to market towards this audience, I highly, highly, highly recommend to start thinking creator first. Now, with other kind of platforms and other audiences, we may really be thinking kind of asset first. So really kind of trailers, logos, key art, splash art, all that kind of good stuff. When you're really kind of looking to unlock a Gen Z subculture of your audience, I really, really recommend really thinking creator first. Now, what do I mean by creator first? It is about when you're approaching, a certain marketing campaign, identifying who the key creators for your audience are in that space. I'll talk about that a little bit more. So what I recommend is working with flexible creative briefs that allow you to communicate your brand or your game identity in more ways than you initially would think. So you might sit down and go, right, my game's USP is X. However, when approaching Gen Z, we can get a bit more creative with that. And we can break it down into perhaps 3 or 4 pillar stones of what your game is, what makes it cool, what makes it fun. And each of those pillar stones, identify creators that kind of reflect that. So that's kind of a bit tricky to visualize, just kind of in terms of, theory and strategy. So I'll kind of apply it to the TikToks that I have on screen here. So for OlliOlli World, like I mentioned, it is a skateboarding platformer that is also incredibly heavy on character diversity and players' ability to customize their character whatever they like. They've got a very extensive character customization system, the art style, very colorful, very visually appealing. So we didn't want to just focus on, we're going to be looking to get Gen Z involved. We're only going to work with people who like platformers. And that's it. That's the end of our marketing strategy. We instead boiled down what these pillar stones of the game were, and then looked at creators that reflected those sort of subcultures. So for character customization, instead of just looking for gaming, TikTokers and streamers and creators within the Gen Z space, we looked at fashion influencers. So fashion creators, people who do outfit of the day or like to take random, inspiration from places and reflect that in how they present themselves. So you can see we had a few TikToks created that were outfits inspired by the colorful outfits within the game. Now, these videos may include a little bit of gameplay clips, but the main draw is to get that sort of fashion-oriented, customization-oriented section of Gen Z interested in our game. That was kind of that stepping stone in there for them. Again, at the top, we have a cosplayer who is cosplaying a character from a skateboarding anime, who is going to sit down and play a skateboarding game with another character. It was sort of a collaboration video. And that was really about saying how, OlliOlli World is a collaborative process. There are ranking leaderboards. You can see where your friends are and you can play sort of against their scores. That was another pillar point that we really wanted to put out there. And then we approached, actual kind of Gen Z skateboarders who are out there on the ramp every day. And we really wanted them to get a couple of clips of them skating, maybe do some tricks in the game and see if they can recreate them in real life. Alongside this, we did also work with some gaming creators just to get that sort of foundation there of that culture as well. So I know that all sounds kind of overwhelming and you might sort of think like, God, how can I break my game down into so many little parts? But they are there. And I know that your game or whatever, or your brand, what you're working on has multiple pillars rather than just the one. And it is an exciting kind of practice for you to get into, to be able to distill, what your game is, what are the core components of it, and then be able to go out there and find this sort of plethora of creators that you thought were kind of out of bounds for you. So marketing my game, I'm only going to go to gaming creators. The creativity of Gen Z means that you can kind of go outside of that and make something really, really fun. And by tapping into those subcultures, you're really showing you kind of this generation or this group of people that you understand the language that they speak. You understand, you're not trying to shoehorn anything into their spaces, which is critical. And I'll come on to that in a moment, but you're not trying to shoehorn your game into places where it doesn't belong. And I know, a couple of other speakers have kind of touched on this, but, we really want to make sure that when you go into these spaces, you're going to kind of be accepted, you're kind of talking the talk, you're showing them content that they're going to be interested in, rather than trying to put your game or your brand where it's not going to be quite welcome. So sort of finishing up this slide, like I said, it's all about understanding what makes your potential audience passionate. So it is really about getting yourself on the platforms that they're using. Is this me telling you to get on TikTok and spend half your workday scrolling through? Yes, it is. Absolutely. This is me giving you permission to do that. So the one thing that I really want to, kind of take away from this, and I wish I kind of had the time to go into, the do's and don'ts of TikTok, but that is an entirely different talk. I do have a great link to a few slides from one of my colleagues from yours truly who has done a talk on TikTok. So if you do want that link, let me know. I'm happy to send it along. She'll be happy for me to spread her name out there. But the one thing I really want you to take away from this, and this is not just, like I said, working on TikTok, but working in any kind of space where you're really kind of looking to get in touch with Gen Z, is to be genuine and to be transparent, to not be afraid of messing up. It's okay. It's more about being open and honest. If a video doesn't quite work or a community isn't, sort of reacts poorly to something, it's not about, covering it up, covering up mistakes or pretending things didn't happen or not listening to communities. It's allow sort of letting that rolling off your back and just going, okay, we want to understand you more. Let's keep developing this. Let's keep talking. Let's see where this is going. One thing I often get told about Gen Z is that they are intimidating, and that is usually because they can sniff out inauthenticity a mile off. Everyone, no one likes being served an ad, but Gen Z especially are able to, because they are so experienced with the digital landscape, they are able to sort of sniff out marketing in a way that other audiences might not, perhaps where older generations may still engage with something they know is an ad because it's relevant to them. Gen Z are much more, because they are used to sort of short form content very quickly. They are very confident in just scrolling away from something, clicking away from something, especially on platforms like TikTok, when all they need to do is swipe the minute they get the sense of, oh, I'm being marketed to, it's not relevant to me. They are quick on the draw. So the more genuine, the more open, the more honest, the more front-facing you can be, the absolute better. Gen Z are looking to connect with people rather than brands. That's kind of the trick that I would like to give you if you're going to take anything from this talk. Cool. Lastly, to kind of settle up, because I know I really wanted this to be kind of short and sweet introduction to Gen Z, and I'm also happy to answer any questions you have. These are my top tips to kind of reaching out to this subsection of your audience. my top one is spending time in their spaces. I cannot over exaggerate how important this is. Sam also mentioned this. Really getting to know the communities that you're reaching out to and the subcultures of the platforms that you're targeting. This doesn't just have to be TikTok. It could be YouTube, can be Twitch, can be Twitter. Spending time just as you, as a person in these subcultures, in these spaces. You don't have to be making active conversation yet, but just really spending the time to understand what makes them tick, what's popular, how they speak, how they present themselves is going to be super, super useful before you even put pen to paper on any kind of strategy. Like I said, don't be afraid to mess up. I know it's easy to say and hard to do, but the more transparent you are, the more human you are, the more human response you're going to get. Third is to not discredit the impact of creators. Some developers I've seen in the past kind of view creators, especially in the Gen Z space, as kind of, put money in, get thing out. Really, creators should be viewed as a collaborator in your marketing campaign. They are professionals in reaching their community. They know what works. They know what timing works. They know what content works. They know what kind of presentation works. The more rigid you are when working with a creator, the more likely that campaign is just not going to fit that community. Or like I said, that community is going to know that something is up. They're going to sniff that something is sponsored. Obviously, I'm not saying, put ads out that you don't declare ads. Definitely declare your ads. Definitely declare your sponsorships. But you want to make sure that the creator is excited to declare that sponsorship and is excited to declare that ad and is able to do things in their own way so it fits seamlessly within their other content. The more you stand out from their other content, the more you're going to have a bit of trouble. And lastly, and you can screenshot this and show it to your boss and say, Lucy told me to do this, so it's fine. Start using TikTok. If you want to reach Gen Z, start using TikTok. Honestly, here is your excuse to scroll through TikTok during work hours, calling it research. You have my permission. So just honestly, that's the best place for you to go if you want to understand Gen Z. If you just think that they are an audience that you can't think about accessing, you feel like there's a wall there, you feel like you're missing a component of your target audience when putting together your marketing campaigns, I cannot highly recommend it enough. Just use it, either if you want to use it, personally, just have fun and engage with stuff that you find interesting and understand how the algorithm works in response to that, or whether you want to use it from kind of a developer perspective, interacting with things that you think are relevant to your game, and again, see how the algorithm adapts and responds and what accounts and what content it starts recommending to you, because it's an excellent starting place for you to then find out what accounts you want to reach out to work with. Cool. Well, thank you so much for listening. You are more than welcome to ask me any questions now, or like I said, I will be sending these slides over. So if you read this and think that you want to have a little chat, my email is on the screen. It is Lucy@the place that I work. Feel free to come along and have a chat. But otherwise, thank you for listening, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Lucy, thank you very much for that. I like the idea you're giving permission. There's a few other things I want permission for, so I'm going to email you later and see if that works. Really like the idea of starting on TikTok by searching for content that's relevant to you, so you can understand how other people are using it, so that you can learn from that, the metrics and the algorithm. That's really interesting, and that feels like a less intimidating space, an intimidating way to start.
Yes, absolutely. I think I totally understand, especially from a developer's point of view, reaching out to this younger audience. I think the best way to go in there is just start using TikTok for fun. Just start using it for yourself. It's the best way to understand how the algorithm works. It's something that can be explained to you over and over again, but until you see it for yourself, you're just not really going to quite twig. And I think the minute you start to understand, what the platform is all about, how it feeds content to people, how are you going to be confident enough to put together a strategy approaching that platform? So it's just somewhere that highly encourages play. So that's what I would highly encourage developers to do.
And it's just a general broad question about Gen Z. Are they fickle? Are they a sticky audience? How do you make sure that they're not sort of losing interest and moving on, or is there nothing you can do about that? Just by their very nature, are they just going to hop around all the time?
Yeah, I think that is sort of an impression that they give, that they are, they like one thing and then they're done with it. I've actually found that Gen Z audience are some of the most passionate. So really, when you get their attention and if you manage to hold on to it, they can be the most passionate members of your community. Like I said, they are they're very artistic, they're very expressive. If they find an IP that speaks to them, you've got them. They're very, sort of the way they express themselves, very fan art, very community, very fandom based audience. So yes, they will be quick to scroll past if you don't grab their attention, but that's okay. With a fast moving audience like Gen Z, you often have multiple chances because their digital spaces are usually so fast moving. So the more times you can get in that space, it's sort of the more tickets you have to the lottery, right? Because they're so fast moving, you're able to enter that space multiple times. But once you do get their attention and you do get their engagement kind of that once, we have found that Gen Z, once they've engaged with something, one or two times, they're starting to get real interested. If you can really capture them, then they will be sort of passionate fans for a consistent amount of time, which is exciting. And they're a fun bunch.
They might be a fun bunch, but you've got to go find them, haven't you? You've got to put the work and put the effort in. That's interesting. Traditional marketing and promotion is just tell everyone, and some people will go for it. This is a somewhat more sort of one-to-one relationship, which is interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there some content that just will never work with Gen Z, or is there, maybe looking at it slightly more positive, is there a certain type of game or a genre or maybe the way it's built that really appeals to Gen Z?
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question. I think so. Like in terms of content itself, we often find that overproduced stuff, so very, very high budget stuff, rarely works for Gen Z. Like I said, they can kind of smell it from a mile off that you're marketing to them. They really like that authentic front face stuff. TikTok is a wild example where a video of a developer literally holding their phone and talking about their game is more likely to do better than a highly polished trailer, which is completely against everything we all know for marketing, right? In terms of, games themselves, there are subcultures within Gen Z for just about everything. But I think just because it's a digital space, anything that's kind of visually appealing, very kind of punchy, customization we do find does really well. Yeah. Anyway, where they can kind of latch on and kind of reflect it back and customize themselves, whether that is just player customization or if you have characters with really interesting designs, we often find that they sort of catch on to that quite quickly.
Is engaging, final question from me,
sure.
You can't start a question with because you can just say yes and that'll be the end of the event.
Yeah.
Is age a barrier to this? Can older people still engage with Gen Z if they follow your sort of guidelines and perhaps do it in the right way? Is there an opportunity for that, or is the barrier just there too high for them to overcome? No,
absolutely. I would not say that age is a problem for this. Like I said, Gen Z really is kind of a mindset. So it's, they were definitely sort of met and spoken to creators kind of like into their 30s, which are they're working on that Gen Z mindset. They have a Gen Z audience. So it is really, you kind of think like, oh, I can't speak to these people. They're part of a different generation to us. But really, it's just about kind of understanding what makes them tick, spending time in their spaces. So I think as long as you're willing to kind of put that work in, it may be a platform that you're kind of a little uncomfortable on. But once you've spent time on it kind of as just yourself, kind of in your personal time, just understanding what content the platform gives to you, you're just going to be able to have that deep breath out and go, okay, there is stuff here for me. So I can use that sort of understanding that there is content here for me to kind of understand what kind of content there is for my market. So I don't think age is an excuse. Download TikTok.
I was about to say, you say you understand what makes them tick. Maybe we should change that phrase to what makes them TikTok and just get the message across in that. Let's try and introduce that as a new phrase then. Really appreciate your time today. Thank you very much, Lucy. I will share your details and hopefully there'll be some additional questions coming your way through the powers of communication. But thank you very much for your time.
Not a problem. Thank you for having me.
that brings us to the end of our speaker sessions today. So on behalf of Ukie and all our speakers, I'd just like to thank Elaine, Ravi, Kerry, Ryan, Sam and Lucy for their time today. Thank you for giving up your time in this busy schedule life that we have. So thank you for coming and joining us today and sharing your insight. And thank you to everyone in particular for coming and joining and listening to the talks. You will get a follow-up later tomorrow with some additional details, some link to the video as a first instance, and then the slides will follow. So thank you very much. And don't forget to check out future Hub Crawl events. In fact, go to the Ukie website, ukie.org.uk. Plenty of content there and other events and activities for you to join in. So thanks very much and take care.